Well, thanks to everyone for coming today. My name is Maddie Golden, and I'm the Leadership Giving Director at United Way of Larimer County. And if you haven't heard of United Way of Larimer County, we are a local nonprofit, and we're also a convener of agencies and companies so that we can really address the most pressing human service needs in our community. And so we bring together organizations and businesses. We are a leader in philanthropy so that we can really move things along for the people in our community that have needs. So we are a connection point for that. There are a few different ways people can be involved with United Way. You can run a campaign at your company and fundraise for the community, like several of, you all do too, as all of these companies do in our community. You can also volunteer, and then we have a few different donor networks, our largest one being our Women Give program that provides child care scholarships to single moms who are going to school. We pay for their daycare, and they get a degree, which is my primary area of focus. We also have a young professionals network, and then a handful of other things if you want to include United Way in a planned gift or participate as a high dollar donor if you've got a lot to give. So with that, I will ask each one of our panelists to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their company, their community engagement initiatives, and how you participate in corporate social responsibility. And so, Karla, will you kick us off?
Yep. First, I'm going to apologize. I'm on the end of a cold and have just a little laryngitis still lingering, so I hope you can hear me in the back. I'm Karla Baise with Odell Brewing Company, and I have been at Odell for 16 years now. And we have a really sort of fun, storied history with being involved in the community. And I think that when Doug, Wynn, and Corky Odell opened their doors in 1989, people started asking them for beer right away for things like galas and auctions and things like that. I think that it was fairly evident that it helped grease wallets and helped nonprofits in our community fundraise. And I think that Corky, Wynn, and Doug never said no to their detriment. So they started to realize that they needed to put some guardrails on their giving, but it still took a few years to create an actual program within the company, and that's when they brought me on board. So I've had a really fun time sort of evolving at Odell with our community outreach, and we do so many different things, but I do really love working with United Way. We've had a very long and deep relationship with them. Women Give is an incredible organization in our community. We also drive a campaign, and we have worked with formerly Business Cares, and now Kelsey's doing some volunteer outreach for companies and things like that as well. So with that said, I will pass along to Stephanie.
So I'm Stephanie with Brahma Roofing and Construction. We're a woman-owned, family-operated roofing exterior company. And our philanthropic giving actually started, I was doing a trip abroad. I've done Mexico and Costa Rica, but I was building a playground in Costa Rica. And one of the most incredible experiences for me was during that process, we were short on equipment and short on labor and short on people that had construction experience. And it was remarkable to see how the community came together to be able to fulfill the project that we were looking to do. And that just instilled something in me of the strength of community and how important community is to us in our business lives, but our day-to-day lives as well. So in launching these businesses, we had a commitment from day one. We launched it through our Brahma Strong program that for every project we completed, a portion of those profits would go back into the community. So one big one that we do are roof donations. So we work with Habitat for Humanity, for example, and we'll donate all labor and material to install a roof on one of their homes. that's wonderful because that's an entire volunteer process as well. So to be able to get professional eyes on drawings, material selections, working with manufacturers, distributors, and things like that, it's a great way to be able to make sure that the people that are moving into those homes have top tier products installed on them. So that's one of the ones that we do. In addition to that, we work with local organizations. Girls in the Spotlight is one where they promote young girls. We work with other ones, Women Give, other organizations throughout that really speak to our team, because one of the things I'm sure we'll get to as well is when you are working to incorporate CSR into your business, it's really important to make sure that you're listening to the team that's also working to move that mission forward. So there's a variety of organizations that we work with. One thing for us is being very hands-on, so really understanding where that organization needs the most support and then being able to work with them to make sure that we're able to give it. So that started from the very beginning, and now it's just growing as we continue to grow. But I think one important note is that when you start it at the beginning, it's a lot easier to work that into your mission, into you as a company, into you as an organization. So when people onboard onto your team, they know that it's a non-negotiable. It's just who you are, it's what your culture is, and so they know what they're stepping into, and it's really incredible to see that evolution as well.
My name is Jeff McCoy. I'm a mechanical engineer at In Situ. It's a water instrumentation company, actually more or less right across the street from Odell Brewery. Kind of a cool building if you're ever up there and wondering what it is, that's what it is. I've been there for 5 years, and when I started, I joined a group that we call the Involvement Team, which is kind of our internal group that tries to give back to the community. We do United Way campaigns, we do the Salvation Army Angel Tree, we do several blood drives a year, and then through another group that we have called the Environmental Team, we do a trail day every year. So if you've ever hiked to the top of Horsetooth Rock, any of the trail changes that you see there were probably done by a large group of us from In Situ. Yeah, it's rather exciting to just give people the opportunity to give back to the community, and I think if you can just remove some of those barriers from people not really quite being able to do that, you'd be surprised at how much people are willing to do and give, and so yeah, it's just a fun thing to do, I think.
I'm Tricia Vincent with the Otter Cares Foundation, which is the charitable arm of the Otter Products Company, OtterBox phone cases here in Fort Collins. I have worked for the company for 15 years, originally in marketing, but most of my journey has been with Otter Cares Foundation, which is 13 years old this year as the company celebrates its 25th birthday. Karla and I have done a lot of this journey together, and I think the stories of Otter, it sort of mirrors Odell as well, in that the Richardsons were always really charitable with their business and with what they could give. It was a part of their fabric and their culture of who they are. And they got to a point where that charitable giving wanted to be formalized and have some strategy and structure as well. And so the Otter Cares Foundation was created in 2009. To do that, we now have a staff of 5, so we're very fortunate to have that investment level from the company. We manage volunteer programs on behalf of the company. So 24 hours of paid time off each year that every employee receives, as well as a company-wide volunteer day that will be taking place in June this year. About 65 volunteer projects for 1,000 or so employees. And then we also have a large grant-making program that provides funding to nonprofit organizations in Larimer and Weld counties. Some event sponsorship, so golf tournaments, 5Ks, galas, but a lot of our work is in K-12 education and funding specifically there.
Awesome, thank you. Well, we have been hoping that this would be a relatively interactive panel experience, and so I know Ben said we could go and go over to the exhibit hall for questions. We have a handful of questions that have been prepared ahead of time, but do any of you have questions about corporate social responsibility that you would want to ask any or all of the panelists? What prompted you to come to even learn about CSR today?
Lay it on us.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
A lot of companies will set up a philanthropic type of a program that is separate from, or a foundation separate from a CSR program. Is that something you guys are working with, and if so, how do you split the work between the two organizations?
Do you mind if I start?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I would love to give a little pitch for the Community Foundation of Northern Colorado, and we do have a growing fund that lives there, so as well as distributing small grants and requests from our charitable partners that we work with in the communities where we sell our beer, wine, and pizza.
Pizza?
Yes, at Sloan's Lake in Denver, we have
Missed that.
amazing pizza
I knew
now.
macaroni and cheese. That's right.
But yeah, so we have a fund that lives there, and we contribute to that every year, and it is a part of our cash gift, so it grows. And then when phenomenons like a pandemic happen, we are able to access sort of larger amounts of cash from that fund that lives there. It's come in handy a few times. I'm sure that you all know we experienced the Cameron Peak Fire and High Park fires and the ensuing floods and things like that. So we have found over the years that it's been really helpful to have sort of a fund. And I think that the Odells really appreciate the nature of the Community Foundation and the fact that they manage those funds for us. They actually gain some interest while they're there, in a similar way as a foundation sort of feeds itself over the years, but that's just how they chose to do it. I think Wynn's father was really involved in the Community Foundation of Cleveland, Ohio. So she grew up really sort of understanding that model. She sat on the board for a long time. So again, they just really have all of that in their DNA. They started their company that way, but and then I thought of the Otter Foundation.
Yeah, so I think that's a question we get asked a lot in terms of structure and how to set things up, and Otter Cares is probably more unique in the realm of corporate giving. I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way to do it. So our structure was set up such that Otter Cares Foundation is a separate legal entity that's funded, a private foundation funded by profits from the private company. There was some intentionality from our founders on that. Because actually removing the foundation from the business means that as a foundation, our primary goal is to serve the needs and board of the foundation and not to serve the business. So the Richardsons really wanted the philanthropic activity to be separate from the company and for those decisions to be made based on the merits of the philanthropy itself and the impact of the gift, not, oh, well, we should donate to this school because if we donate to them, they'll buy our cases. They really wanted those things to be separate. That's not to say that a company couldn't keep that budget in-house and still have that same intent, right? Like there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of oversight. Giving through a private foundation can be difficult in terms of just lots of IRS rules. So it's not always the best fit, especially for a smaller business. And I don't think Otter would have started a private foundation if we were, 5 years into our journey as a business as opposed to almost 15 when the foundation was started. And we also, in addition to the Otter Cares Foundation, we also hold a donor-advised fund at the Community Foundation, which, to Karla's point, is a great middle ground if you want to remove those charitable assets from your company, but not have all the paperwork and oversight that a full private foundation would require. So I think there's a huge spectrum. I think you also asked, how do you divide the responsibility? And again, there's such a spectrum of that. Sometimes it's part of one person's job. I feel like Stephanie and Jeff could probably speak to that as more of a piece of what they do. Karla and I are this is our full-time job.
And I was going to tag on that because I think that you have some really interesting perspectives here in regards to the amount of resources that Odell has, the amount of resources that Otter has, and then also where you are in your entrepreneurial journey. If you are a one-person team right now, which is inspiring in so many ways, like we've started there, then how are you supposed to have one organization, another organization, and manage everything in between? There's only so many hours in a day, right? And so I think that one thing that was touched on is there's not a right or wrong way to do it when your heart's in the right place. And so one thing that I would just say is working with organizations that are willing to give you support and be very transparent in what they need from you in order for you to be the most impactful. I've worked with nonprofits where I've said, where is the most support that you need? And can I be a good fit to be able to help fulfill that? And maybe that's board meetings, or maybe that's a roof where I have roofing like this, right? So if I can install a roof, then that is something that's a day-to-day where that fits really well with being able to, my heart's in the right place, but it also fits into what I'm capable of doing right now. So I think that one thing is being very transparent in where you feel like you can bring the most value, and then working with organizations that are willing to be transparent with you too, because sometimes when you're just starting, financial isn't always the route that you can take. You know, like there aren't endless finances to be able to give big donations, but maybe your time, maybe your team's time, maybe your intellectual knowledge are all things that could be essential to nonprofits. So I would think about, it doesn't necessarily have to be one organization and another organization, but more of just where your heart's at and where you feel like you can contribute. That's a gift to anyone. So thinking about that, like reminding yourself to keep that power too, of like, I'm in this for the right reason, and this is what I can do, and I'm really proud of what I'm capable of right now.
And to go along with that, I know a lot of our employees may not necessarily have the funds to donate or do that, but again, they have the time to do things. The United Way of Larimer County has a great website called NoCo Volunteers that just more or less has local community members and nonprofits that are asking for some help, and it's not financial, it's time-based. So you can sign up for a Saturday morning or whatever to go help XYZ company do whatever it is, and you can search and filter and everything. So if you want to take your kids or your family, or you want to be outside today or whatever it is, you can kind of search and narrow it down, which is pretty helpful. So
I do want to say on the heels of that I think that these activities, I think, there's like a symbiosis that has happened at Odell with the people that come to us that want to work at Odell. I think that our culture has been built so organically that our reputation brings us just an impeccable workforce. Our labor force is amazing. So all of our coworkers come to us with that purpose at heart. I think I'm kind of riding the heels of what Stephanie was saying, that if you're starting out and you want people that have that same purpose and ethos attached to your product, that's how you start that. I mean, and I think that it always, I'm getting off track here, sorry, but I think it always kind of starts at the top and it trickles down. And so it starts with the founders, it starts with where you're at right now. But I do think it's those 5 R's that I can never remember all of them. We did, I looked it up. But there's retention there too. I think that, Odell Brewing Company has this, like, craft beer in general has this sort of lofty view, right? Like everyone thinks it'd be so cool to work at a brewery. And it is, it's wonderful, but it's also grindy and it's a lot of work and it's manufacturing. And so I truly believe that having that purpose and attached to what our team is doing really alleviates some of that, the nature that can just kind of get old. And we get our team out too. We offer 16 hours of volunteer time paid a year. And I think that our leadership team has realized that it's really not a loss. Everyone there gets their work done too, and they're encouraged to go out and be a part of the community where we serve our product. It's powerful. Other questions?
So, part of, I think, community and social responsibility for companies is making sure that you're continuously evaluating where your community needs help. And I think what's great is we have a lot of nonprofits and organizations that want to give back to the community. But I think the unfortunate part of that is a lot of times the people that need to be a part of these conversations or need this help are left out of the conversations. So we as companies and we as boards don't get to really see what our community actually needs. What are each of you guys doing to make sure that your foundations and your companies are continuously evaluating what your community needs and are speaking to those people that need to be a part of the conversation.
That's a great question.
I started last time.
Okay. I'm gonna kick that back because, Leadership Fort Collins, I think is a good example, and that brings me up because Lisa is a part of our team and she's a part of Leadership Fort Collins this year. I think that that's a really good evaluation sometimes, is like being a part of your community in other ways too. So like this comes back to kind of like the story of what kicked us all off was that playground in Costa Rica, right? Where like you see the community saw something and then they were like, oh, this is where they need help. They need equipment or they need labor or they need whatever it may be, and they came and they fulfilled those things. And so I think that being a part of a local business is, and business ownership is hard, right? Like there are a million things that you have to do. So the idea of going to things that don't feel like they're gonna help you meet your bottom line can sometimes be very overwhelming. So you're like, I don't feel like I have another minute in the day to be able to have this conversation. And so I think that one big thing is having conversations, like meeting with nonprofits that fit within the realm of like where you want to service, meeting with other businesses, so having other businesses that you work with and see what they're doing and where they feel like the needs are, and then being a part of different programs. So not necessarily networking programs, but programs that you have that are invested in the community, like Leadership Fort Collins, that touch on different things, that give you some insight to be able to bring those conversations back and say, this is what I've heard. Is this something that, this is what I'm really passionate about, this is something that I feel like we need to address more. Like Lisa had a really, I think it's fair to say, emotional day, which I did Leadership Fort Collins and I felt the same way, when we talked about like medical care in like our local community and what happens with medical care in our local community and what people need, and even with women and children. That's one for me that really gets me going a lot of the times, is how are we supposed to keep this economy running if some of the most valuable talent in that economy is consistently dealing with this one or the other discussion, right? Like, what am I able to do? Do I go to work and then I can't afford daycare, or do I not work? Like, there's so many discussions that happen there. So being able to go out, have conversations, and then bring that back to your team and say, okay, what are you passionate about and what can we do to be able to move that needle a little bit? What are things that get us fired up, get us, having these discussions, and then just little by little, because it doesn't happen overnight. It's something that you have to have consistent discussions on, and sometimes that's through trial and error. Sometimes you work with an organization and you attend a volunteer event, and you're like, yeah, this felt like this is something that is really helping us move this needle forward. Or maybe it was really great to attend, but maybe in our bigger picture, we need to narrow that focus more, because if we focus more of our efforts, then maybe we can move that needle a little bit further because we're not as spread so thin. And so I think that sometimes it's through trial and error. I think it's through conversations. I think it's getting people together and just being very transparent in what you feel like you struggle with, maybe what your neighbors struggle with, what you see within your own community, and just having honest discussions about it. Because I think sometimes we want to sugarcoat things because we don't want to be transparent, we don't want to be vulnerable in certain situations, and I think that just having those vulnerable conversations that are just really based on the core of it, not necessarily how do you solve it, but the core of it, being able to reflect on it, discuss it with your team, and see what you can do little by little to try and make that difference. Because it's little by little by little. You can't do everything on your own.
We assume too that we have a pretty savvy clientele. That people that like drinking Odell beer care about where they're getting their products, because our motto is building community through beer. So I hope that everyone that likes Odell, that's a part of why you buy it. I think that we vote with our dollars more than anything else. So I think that, starting a company and deciding where you want to put your giving and how you want to build your giving into your storytelling is hugely important. I would say that for us, we don't tell our story very well. I don't think that the Odells are so humble that, I'm a part of our HR department. I'm not a part of marketing. I don't think that the humble brag is really tough, right? But if you can attach it to your product, like we do a lot with water, because when you're holding a beer, there's a really great association to be made there that this product is mostly water. Well, it also rings completely true for everyone in our building that we have a unique relationship with water. And I think that that translates in the work that we do as far as like fire restoration and mitigation and trail building and ways that we've helped, millions of pounds of silt coming down the Poudre River by doing flood mitigation in Campbell Valley. And but we target those things, and we have started an organization called Brew Water, where we gather brewers and share information. And I think what I'm getting at is, for us, it's been really a joyous journey of the symbiosis between what we make, the community that we serve, and the people that we do it with, and everybody coming together. And there's power in numbers and collaboration. And I hope that through FoCo Founded, that y'all that are starting out now can keep in touch with each other and maybe lean on each other. I'm going to harken back to Business Cares. For me, starting out in this role, and I think for Trish, we really became good friends there. We were meeting once a month as businesses and we didn't really know what we were doing. I didn't have a whole lot of guidance. The Odells were amazing, and we're like, we need your help. Just start giving stuff into the community. And we also have a unique product that people want, right, at their galas and things. It's easy to get beer out and sort of spread our love in that confetti sort of way. Bigger gives, we hope, have made a larger impact. But again, we just didn't, the conversations weren't happening around it. And now I think finally our team has realized that that consumers are educating themselves, and they do want a product that's attached to giving back to the community.
Do you do most of your giving to other businesses then? Or what is, what do you, I guess, give most to?
So we give in a number of ways. We do have a cash give. We have a grant team that sits in and evaluates folks that apply for our seasonal partnerships and community handles. And then we also do, we have the volunteering project where our team gets 16 hours and we create pathways for them to volunteer. And then we have a very robust gift in kinds budget. So we give away a lot of beer and a lot of merchandise so that folks can fundraise with it. And I do have some structure from our leadership. We have pillars of giving that are equity, environment, and humanity, which is pretty gray, but we have a little bit we have a focus there too. It's mostly around kids and families and under-resourced folks in our community. So yeah, I think that aligning something with what you're doing. May I ask what you're doing?
Me?
Yeah.
She works with me.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome.
I have one that I wanted you to touch on real quick because I think this is valuable. You had mentioned that every year, and I don't know if this is through Otter Cares or through Otter, but every year companies can apply for to get funding for an event.
Yeah,
we briefly talked about that.
Nonprofits.
Is that through Otter or Otter Care?
That's through Otter Cares. That's through the foundation. So those are no-co fund grants, and there's no cause specific. It's just any nonprofit in Larimer and Weld County that's hosting either a fundraising or community awareness event for their cause. So the goal is to help them raise additional funds or raise supporters for the work that they're doing.
Which I think is really, really interesting for, again, you have to think about where you're at in your giving process. And for example, our program looks very different than Odell and Otter. And so that's something that, to be able to look at that and say, okay, for them, they have Otter Cares, where they work in, you have different school organizations and different things that you guys do. But then they also have organizations that could support other businesses in giving too. So I think that sometimes looking at the resources within your community is really important to get your giving process started, because that's what honestly helps with our process too. Is we looked to our manufacturers and our distributors and we said, this is something that's really important to us. What can you do to help us do that? And so the manufacturer partner that we choose to work with will give us 4 houses, so they'll contribute 4 bundles of material essentially to our giving process of building these roofs for Habitat. And that's why we continue to work with them. So I think what you said on, there's power in where we spend our money, right? We vote with our dollars, is being able to say, who are you choosing to work with in all the different ways, all the different resources that you have within your business? who are you working with, and how can they help you help other businesses within your community? So I think that there's sometimes you have to be resourceful as well to be able to say, where can I get resources that help me do these things that I want to do? And then even look at some of the other larger businesses in our community, because we're in such a community that wants to give. Look at some of them, have conversations with them, say, okay, what are you doing that resonates with me? What are you doing that resonates with me? Are there resources that might be available to me there to be able to help further my mission as I'm continuing to grow? Because that's why they have these dollars, is for that, to be able to make sure that their reach is spread even further than what they're able to touch. So I think that, to go back, Lisa, to your question too, it's having conversations, looking at the resources available to you, and then slowly trying to move that needle with what you're able to find. And then as you grow, the contribution's able to grow too.
We've learned too that leaning into that supply chain commitment is really important. I think that as a premium beer, we're letting our customers know that we're providing them a premium product by purchasing premium hops and malted barley, and that takes effort and consideration from our farmers. So I think that if we're sourcing, all post-consumer recycled poster board for our 6-pack holders, if we're holding Ball accountable to providing, post-consumer recycled cans to us and things like that, I think that those are small incremental ways that you can make change as you're starting out too, and also that you need to factor into the price of your product. So I think that if you're making crumble cookies and you're buying organic flour and making sure that it's water efficient and those things are important to you, those are the stories that I think we all need to be sharing more. As a consumer, I want to know that when I'm buying things out in the market. So I think that I love what you said, Stephanie, about making sure that you're aligning your mission with the folks that you work with on a daily basis too. Our distributors, we're looking at folks that are going electric, and we're looking at, we're trying to find all the ways that we can move the needle. And we've learned over 32 years that it's not one thing. There's just not one thing. And I think, Lisa, I don't even know if we answered your question of how you find nonprofits or how you assess need. And I think
she was saying that with us communicating with each other.
Yeah.
So being able to know how businesses communicate with each other to make sure that we're all not doing things separately, that our efforts can be more comprehensive.
Well, that and I just feel like being part of Leadership Fort Collins, it's opened my eyes to so many different people that I wouldn't have met, and so many issues that I wouldn't have even been aware of. And I think as businesses, we often talk about the same issues over and over, and we donate to the same causes over and over, which obviously are needed causes, but I feel like sometimes we leave out the exploration piece of what is our community missing, and what are we doing as a committed company to this community to make sure that those holes are being explored. So
I would point right at Maddie.
I was like,
I think United Way.
Yeah.
United Way has just been an extraordinary resource. I think that they work with every organization that I know of that then works with every organization. I mean, the food bank doesn't just distribute food to folks that come and line up and get their groceries there. They work with La Familia and Alphabest and organizations that are making sure that kiddos are fed after school and fed in the summer. And so I feel like when you start to see, like you were saying, Lisa, just sort of the breadth of need, it can be almost overwhelming. Not almost, it is overwhelming. Yeah. And so again, I think that aligning your giving is so important, and figuring out what speaks to you and your team. So I've been talking a little bit about leadership and how important it is to have that really strong foundation at the top. This is what we do. This is how our company is going to operate, and that needs to trickle down. But I also chair a committee of folks at the brewery that are from every single department, so that there's a voice of people from across the company that also has a say in what we're doing, and they help. They're committed, and they're involved, and they're leading volunteer projects on their own, and they're helping at festivals that help nonprofits that we work with and stuff. I think that you need to decide as a as an organization what you want to do, and then.
Well, and I think that that's something though that I think, and Lisa, you can adjust this too, but I think like for us, we know like women and children and homes are like really big for us as a company because that's what we're able to serve and that's what speaks to us. But there's so much more out there, and I think that that's sometimes what can be overwhelming as you're trying to get started is you have conversations and you're like, I want to help everyone, but at some point, like you can only be spread so thin. So even though you want to help everyone and your heart's so big and your heart's in the right place, sometimes it does take, I know I'm not gonna be the best resource here, but I know that another company might be. So here's another company that might be a really great resource for you to be able to talk to. And that kind of comes back to the conversation piece of having conversations within your community is recognizing you can't be everything to everyone. That's a leadership thing, that's a giving thing, that's a human being thing. You cannot be everything to everyone, which means you cannot give to everyone. It's just, at least like for our business, it's not feasible, right? Because it's all about what can you do to move that needle forward. And so I know I keep referencing it, but I know that for us, putting a roof on a home does a lot, right? And that's something where I'm like, that is a big thing that we're able to do right now. Being able to work with local nonprofits and sit on the board or have conversations and volunteer our time and attend events, that's something that our team is able to do right now that feels like it makes a difference. And so I think that sometimes it's just having conversations and being able to say that's not something, because I have, nonprofits that have approached me and said, this is what we're looking for, can you do X, Y, and Z? And I'll say, at this time, that's not something we're able to do, but here's another resource that might be like an organization that you could connect with. And so I think that sometimes being able to recognize what you're capable of and then what someone else may be able to be capable of, and just, like I said, not spreading yourself too thin because that can become overwhelming. Seeing all of the needs can become overwhelming. And so recognizing what you feel like you can take on, what your small contribution, your large contribution can be now, and then being able to know that it's just a little bit, I keep saying it, but moving it forward little by little really does make a difference.
And I want to hop in because we have 5 minutes left. But I think one thing I heard you say was centering community voice and direct service and knowing what those needs are and listening to the voices of the people who are actually being served by all of the nonprofits and all of the programs. United Way supports lots of nonprofits, and we do hold really key relationships with the school districts, other major nonprofits, the county, the city, and really letting those organizations who are providing the direct service tell us what their families are experiencing, because we can create 100 really incredible programs, but if it's not really what the community or the family needs, it's kind of lost. So we've been doing a few different things at United Way to center community voice, to really hear from them. What do you actually need? What are some of the gaps? Because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of nonprofits, and there are some duplicative services. And so, anyway, I think all of what everyone said, but then also being cognizant of where you might volunteer so that you can see that direct need. Maybe you go volunteer at the food bank, or you go volunteer at a school event or something like that, so that you can see the families. And that's not always appropriate, but sometimes you can.
One thing to piggyback off of that too is the not being afraid at whatever size you're at. It's just asking directly, what do you need? We did a drive with Alternatives to Violence, and a lot of times people assume that a women's shelter needs clothes, children's clothes, and they're like, that is literally the last thing we need right now. We do not need clothes. Yeah, because they're if people assume things.
Yeah, they need kitchen items, they need diapers.
Yeah, and so that was where they're we need sanitary items. We need toilet wands, we need toilet paper, we need laundry detergent, we need dishwasher stuff. And it's people, even during that drive that we did this winter, people are oh, well, there was an opportunity where it said, okay, we need 10 cartoon backpacks. And those were the first things that were filled in. So the 10 backpacks, all of a sudden we had 20 backpacks. And we're okay, we don't need 10, we don't need 20, we need 10. We need all of these other things. And they were so appreciative because they're we don't have room to store these things. We don't have room to put things that we don't need. So I think that going back to your point too is having conversations and just asking, what do you need? And then, can I fulfill that for you? And it's something that I think that brings it back to the core discussion of actually paying attention to the people we're serving. And I think that comes back to like where your heart is and being able to say, okay, am I doing this for the right reasons? Is this something I'm passionate about? And am I actually answering a need of someone who's explicitly asking for help? And I think that that's something that sometimes, if you're just getting started, could be a great starting point, is having that conversation and just saying, what can I do for you? And then actually doing what they ask for, not what you think they're asking for. Sorry to...
No, you're good. We've got just a couple more minutes left. Any burning questions? I know we haven't heard a ton from Jeff. If you want to talk a little bit more about, how In-Situ decides how they participate in the community.
We just, I guess we don't necessarily participate in with specific organizations other than like the United Way or the trail days and blood drives and things like that. But I think we leave it up to our individual employees. So like through working with the United Way and then working with all of the nonprofits in Northern Colorado, you as the individual that's, signing up to have your payroll deduction or an annual give or whatever, you can specify where you want that to go. So you can say this specific 501c3 company or, nonprofit, I want my money to go there. And then United Way handles all of the back end of making sure that your money goes there. So, I think it's, again, like I said, it's about removing those barriers for people to be able to give. So if you just make it easier for them, they're more likely to do it, so.
Do you see a wide variety of where people want their money to go?
I don't know, I don't
Or even
get to
like,
see anything.
I could
So
look it up.
I think, I don't know that a lot of our employees do that, like, necessarily specify that where they want it to go, but I don't know for sure, to be honest with you, because I don't see those forms.
Yeah.
Where does so your involvement team that you mentioned, what do they decide on then? What's their purpose of the?
So when I started, these were kind of the 3 or 4 things that we already did as a company: the United Way campaign, the Salvation Army Giving Tree, and then the blood drives. We've kind of dabbled in adding a couple of other things, and then unfortunately over the pandemic, kind of everything got put on hold, and a bunch of the people on the group kind of left or aren't involved anymore, and so I'm trying to get it going again. So I think just as people on the group bring in more ideas or different things that they would like to get involved with, we try to make it as easy as possible to do that. So
your guys' big thing is just giving as a whole.
Right.
Just like that quality as a human being as part of your team.
right. So
That's awesome.
just whether it's time or money, just try and give back somehow. So,
Yeah.
Tricia, what do you guys call it? Gifts of time, treasure, or?
Talent.
Talent. I love
And we
that.
actually have been adding a 4th T of testimony as well, which is like when you tell your story of how you give and why, it can be really impactful for other people.
I love that.
Well, I want to be respectful of time, and that 45 minutes did fly like we thought it would. But thank you all so much for coming, and if any of you are able to pop over to the exhibit hall for any further questions. I know Karla has some business cards. I'm happy to connect any of you with any of our panelists, so we'll see you over at the exhibit hall.